welcome back. You join me now as we are about 40 miles or so from the top of descent, and at this stage I'd start doing some work to prepare for our landing at Nice Airport on the Côte d'Azur. So let's take a look at what we need to do. First of all, I want to check that the landing elevation is correctly set. As you can see here, I've got that set to automatic, so that's all good. Down to my MCDU, and I want to check the performance approach page. So let's have a look at that. I need to enter in the QNH, which is 1013 because we're on standard weather. Temperature 12 degrees. Wind is 0 at 0. Transition altitude is 5,000 feet. Check the V approach, which is 126 knots. I'll enter in the Barrow decision height, which is 210 feet. I think that's most of the information I need in here. Let me double check. Yep, okay, that looks good. And I'm going to set the auto brake to low. I've got a nice long runway at Nice, so don't need to worry about setting that any higher. I'm going to dial in the altitude that we'll want to descend to 4,000 feet, but I won't activate it until we're a bit closer to our top of descent. With that done, let's run our arrival brief.
Are you ready for the approach brief? Okay, we will be arriving by ATC vectors. As for the approach, we can expect the ILS. Landing runway condition is dry. Anti-ice is not required. We will use full flaps for landing. Auto brake, we will use the low setting. The packs will be on. And for the MDA, it's 210 feet. Any questions?
That's checked and no questions.
Approach brief complete.
Okay, so we've got that finished in good time. We have about 25 miles to run until the top of descent. What I normally do is start the descent about 10 miles before top of descent, just to give a smoother descent down rather than a fairly marked step down once we do get to the top of descent. So it's just making it gradual. So 10 miles left to run now to the top of descent, and I'll manually initiate. So at the moment we're starting a descent of about 900 feet per minute, which is fairly gradual. Once we intercept the path indicated by the magenta dot here, then our descent rate will become somewhat more increased, about 1800 feet, to keep us on the descent path that's predicted by the flight computers. With it started, I'm just keeping an eye now on the descent to make sure everything's going okay. You'll see here over on the speeds tape the diamond, which indicates our preferred speed, and then a line above and below indicating our max and minimum speeds that we want to be within whilst we're in the descent. If we start going too fast, I can always use the speed brakes to slow us down a little bit during the descent. So you can see we've intercepted the actual glide slope now for our descent, and our descent rate has increased. Let's take a closer look. Down now to 2,900 feet per minute. 3,000 feet per minute in fact. And believe it or not, ahead of us here out of the cockpit, there, the area I'm circling, that's Nice Airport, and that's where we're landing. But we're going to descend down before turning left, heading out across the ocean, coming back a little bit, and describing a wide arc to come back in here. In fact, it may be further across. In fact, it is. It's over there where my pointer is now, before turning right, coming on to a final approach, about 17-18 miles long in fact, I think, at the point that we do the turn, to come into land, runway 04 in that direction. I was discussing this approach with a colleague of mine, Rich, at Flight Sim 481, and in consideration of how far out it puts you across the ocean and back in again, the only thing we could think of was that the fair and worthy burghers of Nice on the Côte d'Azur don't want these noisy aeroplanes polluting their local area, so they send us out as far away as possible to have as small an impact on the area as possible. That's maybe the less charitable answer. There is some high ground around this area, not the airport of course, it's right out into the ocean, but the area around it, there are some pronounced hills around. In fact, as we're coming around there and still descending, Let's take a quick look at Nice on the Navigraph chart so you can see what I mean. So here's Nice, there's the approach we'll be taking to come into land, and all around here you can see the elevation figures: 10,700, 8,700, 11,000, 12,900. So there is an awful lot of high ground here to the north of the airport, which makes good sense really then of them bringing us out here to the sea and then coming safely in this direction. We're going to be landing runway 04 left. And these are all, in fact that's the SIDS, that's not much use to us at all. Let's take a look at the ILS for 04 left, there we go. So this is what we'll be doing. There's the holding point or the initial approach fix at Nice. We need to be there at 4,000 feet. There's the arc I was talking about before turning right, and as I say, 17 miles then to go. We need to be at 200 knots by then to get us onto runway 04 left. Back to the aircraft. Everything seems to be going okay. Next thing I'm looking out for is the 10,000 feet call, when the first officer will put on the landing lights, and I'll select the LS button on the EFIS. That will give us our magenta diamonds here on the primary flight display. Given the ground is so high around Nice, it makes sense as well that they bring us across the coastline at a fairly high altitude, leaving us quite a distance to run to lose the necessary speed to be able to line up for a landing. So although you can see the airport as we're following the coast and it looks seductively close, then you have to hang this long tortuous left out across the ocean to come into land. I guess when looked at through the eyes of a health and safety officer, or just safety, it kind of makes sense. Quick check of the fuel. We took off with 6.8 tons. We've got 4 tons now. Estimated fuel on board at landing. Oh, I've got a different page here. 3.4 tons. So we will have used 3.4 tons to move 80 passengers and their associated baggage from Innsbruck to Nice. So we're slowing down now to hit the 250 knot speed limit at 10,000 feet. Standard way to do that is to move the throttle to idle and to bring the nose up, bleed the speed off.
flight level 100.
Okay. There's the landing light on. And I've selected LS, and the first officer has switched the display over to the constraint button rather than the airport button. Next thing I'm looking for is the transition altitude, which for this airport is 5,000 feet, at which point we'll change the baro ref, and again I'll be interacting with the first officer to make sure that everything is as we expect it to be.
Hi there, flight deck. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Captain, the cabin is...
Thanks.
To go.
1013 set.
1013 cross-checked, passing 4,000.
Checked. Lovely representation there of the sun reflecting off the surface of the sea. Let's see if we can have a look at that from the passenger's view. Yeah, it didn't show quite the same way. The next thing I'm looking out for here is the decel pseudo waypoint, when things will start to get busy for the landing. Having set up the approach inside the MCDU during the cruise, most of that work has been done for us, or done by us really. If I zoom out far enough here on the display, we can't really see it yet, but about here is where the decel point will pop up. It's the point at which we need to start slowing down to be sure that we can reach our relevant points along the glide slope in good time and in good order. Quietest seat in the house, right up here in front in the driver's position. You can see flashing up there occasionally the decel pseudo waypoint, and 10 miles before that I'll start going through some flows, getting us ready for the approach. Okay, we're closing in now. So, quick check of the ECAM, everything's okay. Stowed the sliding table, I don't have mine out, so that's okay. Quick look at the signs on the overhead, make sure that the cabin signs are on. So the seat belt's on, no smoking's on auto, emergency lights are on, that's fine. Quick check on the barrow reference, should be 1013, which it is. And the engine mode, check that we're on norm, which we are. And time to go in for the approach checklist now. Approach checklist, please.
Approach checklist.
Confirmed.
Briefing.
Checked.
Status.
On.
Seatbelts.
1013 set.
1013 set. MDA
210 feet set.
210 feet set. Engine mode select.
Norm.
Approach checklist complete.
Activate approach phase.
Approach phase activated.
So we've got about 5 miles to run now to the decel waypoint. We've got ourselves in good shape. Activating the approach phase gets our speeds down here to 180 knots, which is our flaps 1 speed. You might remember when we looked at the charts that we needed to be at 200 knots as we were here on the approach section, so we're definitely in good shape as far as that goes. The next thing I'm looking out for is for the localizer to come alive, signified by this magenta diamond starting to move across. That'll happen as I come here, approximately turning right onto this straight approach. Once it does that, I'll activate the approach button. It's a really long approach into Nice, and it's quite easy to be in a rush to get all your flaps and everything sorted out and have the gear down, and if you do move through it fairly swiftly, you'll find yourself with still 14 or 15 miles to go until touchdown, which doesn't make for a very exciting video, and if it were real life would be somewhat disgruntling for any of those aircraft behind you looking to get into land as well. Need to pay good attention here because that diamond starts to move fairly quickly and we want to be sure to intercept the localizer. There it goes. Beautiful effect with the shadows tracing across the aircraft here. Something built into P3D, of course. Very nice. Another airport down here, if I may be permitted to use a Yoderism. This is not the airport you're looking for. There's the one we want directly ahead. I'm going to hold off for a while before flaps. If we take a closer look at the PFD, you'll see why. We've still got 15 miles to run before touchdown, so there's no massive rush to throw out the flaps and the gear. Flaps 1.
Speed checked. Flaps 1.
$2,500.
Flaps 2.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
Gear down.
Gear down.
Flaps 3.
Speed checked. Flaps 3.
1000.
Flaps full.
Speed checked. Flaps full. Cabin crew, seats for landing.
Landing checklist, please.
Landing checklist. Cabin crew.
Advised.
Auto thrust.
Speed.
ECAM memo.
Landing. No blue.
Landing checklist complete.
$500. $400. $300. 100 above. $200. Minimum.
Continue.
Check.
$100. 70. 60. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 10. 5.
Reverse green. D7. Spoilers.
Okay to clean up.